They're also working on changing, right? What are we seeing? What's a big part of the CPI, which is rentals.
Yes.
And rentals don't come down easy, but now recently they're changing that as well of how we're going to determine of how to track rentals, which is probably going to show the CPI, and they're going to try to bring it down even further because of this data that supposedly is going to show that, a more real-time accurate picture of rental incomes coming down by the way they take it. And I know you've been reading up on this.
Yeah, in this, we've talked about the lag time, and we've gone back and forth about housing and rental and things. Basically, government stats are looking at and saying, hey, how can we get a more accurate or more up-to-date picture on rental cost? Because rent makes up what? Depending on how you look at it, 11 to 15-ish% of the CPI. Okay, it's a huge factor.
Even more than that, yeah.
And when the BLS is saying, hey, we created a new indices, and it looks at microdata using repeat rent index methodology. So what they're doing, Frank, is they're not taking all tenants and repeat tenants. They're just taking the new signed leases. And I think you have it pulled up on your screen for our YouTube. And what this line is showing you, essentially all this report does is take out the 6 to 9 month lag time that the CPI is going to show. Because we've talked about this several times in the past, Frank. If you sign, and I used to live in an apartment complex, if you sign a 13-month lease or whatever, obviously you're locked in for 13 months. Well, if by the time the next week comes down, if you re-sign that at a little higher price or whatever, but I have 13 months to wait, all my data is showing up, at a higher price. And so there's a lag time between when I would re-sign my lease agreement, and then you can compare those either 9 months, year over year, whatever. This is essentially just looking at, hey, what is going on right now in the very short glimpse of things. And as you can see, you're still showing CPI rent go higher, but the actual new tenant only is coming significantly lower based on the chart.
Significantly lower.
And what that says is, hey, again, just replace jobs data with rent data. What this is going to say is like, hey, the data we've been looking at has been telling us a complete different story than the reality of what's going on. And again, that could have huge implications to the policy going. Not until March, though. Anyway.
Yes, because that's going to be a result of
exactly
how they calculate the CPI with new tenant repeat, right? So new tenants, obviously, if you're a brand new tenant, you're going to pay a little bit lower, right? You're going to see rentals come down. But what about that tenant who's locked in, whatever, for a year and for that year lease? Now you're just like, oh, okay, so they're paying, $2,500 a month, and they used to pay $1,500 a month the year before. But we're not going to count that, even though they're going to pay that for the full year with just the new tenants coming in, right? So it's a way to look at data, right, and how to interpret it. And bottom line is this: is going forward, the Fed is going to realize a lot quicker, based on what's going on right now, that the market's not that great. We've been trying to tell you the market's been in a recession for again, 2 straight quarters of negative. That's the definition, right? It's very rare to see job growth during that, but you're going to see job growth if people are lying about the fucking data, right? And that's what we have. We have people lying about the data. You're not off by that much without lying about the data. And they need to get called out on this. Why is that so wrong? Like, where are our mathematicians? Where are the people that study statistics? Why aren't they looking at this and writing reports and saying, this has never happened, something's wrong? This could, we've seen it done before. I've seen it in just so many different areas where, there was a movie about this where these kids they got the answers for the test. It's an old movie. I forgot who was in it. The guy from Dumb and Dumber, and not, Jeff Bridges, right? Yeah. So he was in it. So, and the school actually, they basically brought like mathematicians in to look at all that, because all these kids went from doing, having whatever 40s and 50s to getting like, the greatest marks on this placement test, and they finished number 1, right? And they said, this can't happen. This is wrong. So you need to do it over, because based on this can't happen. It's like a 0.1. Like when you're looking at the probability of these numbers of how off they are, this can't happen, right? Something had to be manipulated, and we need to figure out why, because this is a massive number. This is determining globally what's going on with the Fed raising rates, and every single country impacted. It impacts the dollar, impacts the global economy of what they're doing based on this one measure. That's one of the few positives out there and strong points that the Fed's saying, okay, we need to continue to raise rates because the labor market is so strong. If it wasn't strong, we have a totally different outlook going into 2023 of everything that's going on. And you probably wouldn't have raised rates this quickly and maybe went to 50 basis point hikes, which is significant, maybe the last 2 quarters.
Right.
Because 50 basis points is a significant amount when you're looking at the Fed funds rate. It doesn't seem like that because we're going up at some crazy pace at 75 basis point hikes like crazy. But that's a massive amount where, it's interesting to see how this is going to play out. But it's in order for you, the reason why I'm so pissed off with this, Daniel, is I'm a research analyst and I dig and I try to find the best sources, and it's all based on data. And you're great contacts that and you want to get the real story and figure it out and say, okay, these people are not, this company doesn't have it right, or these guys are betting against us wrong, and that's how you make money. It could be a positive, negative, you're betting against a consensus. When you have data that's false like this, and think about China, I mean, how do you trust anything going forward? And now you're seeing the policies of the Fed. This is a major story that I cannot believe is not every place, and we're covering this like Elon Musk or Sam Bankman-Fried, who just got off the flight and is now in the U.S., right? I just saw on TV. He just got off the flight with his suit on. Like, that's bigger than this story? Are you kidding me? I mean, let's get more information about this. Is the Philly Fed wrong? Maybe they're wrong in their calculation, or maybe they're not doing it. We haven't seen anyone. We haven't seen a BLS come out and say, no, that's wrong, even though they're using BLS data to come to this conclusion, just, more timely data. But to me, this is a significant story, and let's see if it's going to impact what the Fed does going forward. I don't know if it's going to result in them pivoting, actually lowering rates sooner in 2023, but you have to look at this calculation and say, wow, we could see a pivot earlier than expected. And not only that, if this is correct, we are going to see a deep recession. Since we were already in recession then, based on the new definition, now, if you're looking at 2020, we're going to be in a very, very deep recession, to the point where even when they pivot, it's going to take them a very, very long time to actually get this market back on their footing, which is another reason why I love buying puts, because the confusion and the uncertainty and now data that you usually rely on that you can't trust, that's off by 98%. This, to me, this is an incredible story, Daniel.
It is. We'll have to wait till February meeting to get, I don't know if Jerome Powell, Fed Chair Powell, will speak in January where the markets will pick up. Regardless, in February, somebody needs to ask him about this report, how that influences him and others thinking alike. And to the credit of Senator Rick Scott out of Florida, I believe, Frank, I have read this, and it's a little gray, but I believe tomorrow he is meeting with some Bureau Labor Statistic people to talk about this discrepancy. And one final note to go off here, Frank, it's not the Jeff Bridges, who's an amazing actor and all kinds of stuff. Dumb and Dumber, you're thinking of Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels is the guy.
Yes.
And it was
we still don't know what other movie you're talking about, but we know it stars Jeff Daniels, not Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Daniels movie, but it was about, these kids that from rural high school, and they all winded up they got the answers to the test, this big state test, whatever it was, and then they winded up, getting all A's. They didn't say, all right, let's get 80, 85s, 90s and get it good. They were like, let's get perfect. And they wound up being ranked number 1 out of nowhere with their test grades. And then when they went back, they had to take the test again. They found out they were cheating. It's a true story. Same here. I mean, how come we're not up in arms where we want to get the data right? Everybody, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, you need to have the data right, especially when it comes to government figures. You need to have the data as close as possible. We know what happens with China when they lie about that data. Nothing that they do you can rely on. With their government, we need to get this data. It cannot be this wrong, especially in this age where, 5G, data analytics, how quick we can calculate things unbelievably with whatever. With the technology that we have available today, there's no way that this number could be off by that much, because it has serious implications. That means that we were in a recession. And now we're talking about a Fed, we're in a recession, where now we're going to track rental incomes differently, where we're going to see, CPI come down lower than expected. Now what do we do when we go forward? Because it looks like now we really, really, really raise rates much, much more than expected. And that's not going to go away soon, even if the Fed decides to pivot mid-year. Let's see what happens. We're not going to get, when you say next revision is, not going to see February, right? It's going to be the third.
That's the next meeting. So that's what I'm going on.
Yeah.
No, I don't think the revisions or anything will come until March. But I was just talking about the next Fed meeting in February, where Jerome Powell needs to address, hey, did you see this? There's going to be some more information come out about this. Is this accurate? That's influencing you. What do you think? Mm-hmm. He just needs to, and I don't know if he has a speech plan between now and the next Fed meeting in February. You can't work in January all the time. You got to take Christmas off.
Yeah, you got to take some days off. But it is interesting to see when they come back and what they're going to say. And again, let's see if third quarter, right? Would you say it was up over 500,000, right? Again, that signal like, oh, jobs are great, so we're okay raising rates. Let's see how that number gets revised. Because if that number gets revised the same way, or if it doesn't, that makes it even more interesting of how somebody fabricated this number.
Yeah, it opens up the worm basket of, hey, why just this one?
Why just that number, right? Which you really needed that number to be very, very good for specific reasons going into an election year. Why? Well, I mean, it was very important because that determined, based on what you spread out as a new definition of recession, which I had never been heard before. I never knew that. If 2 straight quarters of negative GDP, I've been doing this 30 years, that's a recession. But it's not a recession if the job market is shrunk. Why do you think there's a reason why we've never seen that in history? Right? Why do you think there's a reason that we've never seen those conditions in history where we're seeing negative GDP growth, and yet the labor market is stronger than ever? That does not make sense. And obviously, this is why it doesn't make sense, because it wasn't happening. So let's see how this data is tracked. Let's see going forward. But it is going to open up questions. To me, I think there should be economists questioning this like crazy, because we want to get to the bottom of it and feel like, we know the numbers and the numbers have to be accurate. But if this number is like this, how do we know the rest of the numbers are accurate? Okay? I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying that someone who covers numbers and statistics, to miss by that much, and if that's true, holy shit. I mean, that's going to open up. I mean, uncertainty is the death of markets. I say it all the time. You want to talk about uncertainty? There it is. When you're uncertain about what kind of data the government's reporting, you don't believe them anymore, good luck trying to invest. Good luck.
Yep. Because you
have no idea what's real and what's not real. And that's why this is such a big deal, and we need to get to the bottom of it. I just can't believe that we're not seeing it covered that much other than a few places. This should be the number one story over the past week, and it's not even close. It's probably like the 80th story in terms of business. And again, you can't really even find it if you try to pull up data from Google, which is not surprising. Right?
Yeah.
So.